Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Press Play Lifestyle Inspired podcast, where we do interviews with people like Leslie here on topics that help our listeners, that's you, find the resources, tools, and support they need to be their best inspired selves. So, how are you today?
I'm fantastic, Jackie. Thank you for having me on.
You're welcome. I bet it's nicer there in Chattanooga than it here in Milwaukee.
Oh, it's gorgeous. It's 60 and sunny and absolutely beautiful.
It was above zero this morning, so I was feeling pretty happy about that. Yeah, it was -1 last Friday.
Well,
We're not
we
going to
had
do
winter
that.
last week. We had about 3 inches of snow, and then
Ooh,
by the end of the day, it was gone.
melted.
And yeah, so we had our one day of winter. I'm good.
I lived in Gatlinburg, Tennessee, or Pigeon Forge, but no one knows what that is. So Gatlinburg for about 2 years when I was younger. And I remember the first time it snowed, people were just completely flabbergasted. They're like, what do we do with it? I'm like, don't worry, guys. It'll melt by noon. You'll be fine. It'll be fine.
Yes.
So would you mind, since we just got into chit-chatting because we get along so well, why don't you introduce yourself to the audience and tell us a little bit about yourself if you could?
I am Leslie Smith. I own Heron Design. I'm marketing and branding consultant. I have been doing this for about 30 years and the last 18 with my own company. And I love working with small business owners to develop their branding and marketing strategies and websites.
Awesome. So you started working when you were 10. And well, one of the things that I can't say I was clever enough to notice on my own, but I was wondering why you named the company after a bird.
This started about 5 years before I opened my company. My family and I were on a beach in Melbourne, Florida, and walking along, it was before dawn. Walking along, we were the only ones on the beach until we came upon this fisherman fishing. And then there was this huge heron behind him. And so we stopped, and, because we're geeks, stopped and watched for a little while. And the bird was stock still. Then the fisherman cast. And when he did, the bird took a giant step forward and stopped again. And this went on, and I was fascinated for about 15 minutes until the bird got within 5 feet of him. And every time, the bird would just take a huge step forward and stop, motionless. And finally, the fisherman turned around and said, "Not today, Harry, go away." And so I asked the guy, I'm like, "What is this?" He said, "Oh, he tries this all the time." And one time he actually got into my bait bucket, and that was his breakfast. So I thought, how clever is that? You don't ever think of birds being quite so smart. And it stuck with me. And years later, when I started my company, I'm like, yeah, I'm naming it after that bird. So the Heron Company.
Yeah, so like one little step at a time, patient and
Patient
clever.
and persistent. And I also live on the Tennessee River, and I get to see herons all the time, and they're just magnificent birds.
So what is it like living like right along the river? Are
Well,
you
and I say on the
outdoorsy?
river. I live on a creek. I don't get to live right on the river. I go down and I live on a mountain and get to follow the creek down to the river quite often. And I do spend a lot of time on the water, and it's phenomenal. It's peaceful.
Oh, I bet. I don't. It's all frozen. But I think sometimes it thaws, but I'm not really sure. I try not, no, I'm like, I try not to go outside because no, I'm kidding. But it's not as warm here. So one of the things that I really loved when, lots of things, but when I was toiling around on the website and was super excited to have you come on, was there's this one line on your website that said, and I'm reading it, the right branding and marketing can open a whole new world for a business owner. Could you just tell me a little bit about what you mean by that comment?
And that is something I feel like sometimes I get on a soapbox about, but people don't pay attention to their branding and marketing. And for a business owner, especially a small business owner, if you are the face of your business, your marketing, one, lets people get to know you. If it's done right. If it's not done right, then it's not going to do any of this. But if it's done right, it lets your personality shine through so that, one, you're connecting with people who are going to like you anyway, which makes your work so much more fun. And that's another topic, that you're dealing with people, that your ideal clients that like you. But also, when it opens the door to letting you shine through, when you walk into a meeting or you meet somebody online or you go into a group, if people are already familiar with your brand, you're not walking in as a stranger. And that increases your confidence so much. Like, if your pictures make you look good and you've got your brand colors incorporated in your photos, and your colors are things that represent you and your logo represents you, all of those things help a business owner put their best foot forward and connect with people who like them anyway.
Yeah, because
So,
I think one of the things that I felt as a business owner, it who's been around a long time too, is it's so noisy. It feels so noisy now. Like there's so much more accessibility to larger platforms, right? So when I was a kid, like the only kind of like the big deal would be getting on the news or in the newspaper. Like that was literally like in a couple bigger magazines. And now like everyone's a superstar, right? You can start a podcast tomorrow. You can get on Facebook Live today. And so it's so noisy. And how do you stand out in that noise as a solid brand when there's so many other people out there kind of tooting
well,
their horn?
I think that's the key to, one, if your branding is you, then you stand out. But the other thing is, it's so easy, and this is one of the things I really work with clients on, instead of trying to be all things to everybody, because it is so noisy, like you said. If you niche down and find that group of people, I mean, there's always somebody that you can help, or if you're good at what you do, you find that service that fits a need and the exact person you can help. And then you take your branding and you target it just to that person. You don't try to be everything to everybody, because it's impossible to stand out that way unless you have a $1 million budget. But if you're just going after one specific person, suddenly it's not so hard to stand out, because your messaging is going to get through to them if you're using the right language. And what I tell my clients, let's listen to what people are saying, listen to how they describe their pain points, and then you take that exact language, not something similar. You take their words and you incorporate it into your messaging, so that when you're talking to them, they hear themselves. And it's like a beacon or a magnet. I mean, it automatically opens you up to them, and that helps you stand out.
I think I had that happen to me literally today. So I was talking with a coaching client of mine, and I was trying, one of the things he wants to work on is not talking over people. And one might not realize that, but big problem of mine, because I like words and I like talking. So I have all these coping mechanisms that I put in place. But one of them is, this sounds so terrible, but is to listen and then write notes so that you give pause between what you're doing and what they're doing, because you're kind of getting on their pace. But then the other is to rephrase or validate back to them what they said to make sure you understood, even if you think you understood. And so I use ask, listen, and validate. That's kind of how I always train. And he goes, so you mean I should just write down some stuff and then parrot it back? And I'm like, yes. So then the next time we talked about it later, we were talking about action items. I was like, so that means you need to write stuff down and parrot it back, right? Instead of, because what I had said, he understood, but it didn't really resonate with him. So something like that, where like if your end user says parrot and you say validate, you're going to miss them just enough to not get through the noise.
Right. But if you're
Yeah.
using his language, he a lot of times they won't realize they've said it, but they hear it. And it's like, oh, she gets me.
Yeah.
And that is what you want. And that's what marketing done well. I mean, you want people to realize you get them and you can help them. And you don't have to, it sounds a little manipulative, but it's the way you show people that you can work with them and you can help them. And so, and it's,
I get people say a lot that they think it's manipulative. They say that about marketing, but I think it's like it could be used for bad, right? But I think there's some unknown wisdom in that to like pause for a moment and communicate with the person in a way that they need to be communicated with
right.
versus talking to everyone the way that you want to be communicated with. Um, Marketers are just better at it because they've been practicing it for a long time, but uh, I don't know if is it manipulative to be considerate of how someone else wants to be
I,
communicated with?
I don't think so, because in the end, the whole goal is you've got something that will help them.
Right.
I mean,
It
if
is
you
if you're
don't,
trying to convince them.
if you're just trying to take their money, then yes, it's wrong and it's manipulative. But if you genuinely got a service or a product that's going to help them, it's not manipulative. It's helping them. It's finding a way to reach them. It's just like, old time evangelists who felt like, they were going to save the world. You've got to, if you know you can help save this person, you've got a responsibility to go do it. And it's not hurting them at all. You're going to make them better. And that's, I guess that's the way I feel about it. I know my services help people make more money. So I want to help them make more money.
Yeah. That's an easy yes, right? What do you do? I help you make money. Oh, okay. That sounds great. Although it's probably not that easy, but
No.
one of the things that I thought was fun that you wrote out was that you were doing advertising before there were computers, which again, I'm not sure that's true because you can't possibly be old enough for that to be true, but I'll assume you're not lying. And you even mentioned PageMaker, which is like the beginning of like Adobe before there was Adobe.
Oh, it was so phenomenal. When I was in college, I got to be in a beta group for Adobe. There were 6 college students in my college that were selected, and I'm sure they worked with probably 30 colleges all over the country. And we got to study and play with the precursor to PageMaker. It was awesome, and there were a lot more things in it than what they ended up actually releasing. I mean, we got to play with animations, we got to do all this really cool stuff. And then I graduated and nobody had computers. And I literally, my first job, I laid out type by hand, I drew stuff and then shot it with a big camera and it was not long, it was like 6 months. And then they released PageMaker, and I convinced my boss. I'm like, I know how to use this. And I convinced my boss to buy a computer. We did not have a printer. I had to take it to a place downtown and a couple streets over downtown where I could have things printed. But suddenly, it made our ads, our weekly ads. My department used to spend all week creating ads in a newsletter. And then as soon as would come out, we'd start on the next one. Things that I can do now in an hour, we would take a week to do. And so it was so much fun when computers finally came out. And then I was fortunate to have worked in it to the point that all through my career, I would be one of the point people to work with printers in town. For the longest time, there was a thing of Mac versus PC. And if you didn't have a Mac, you were considered not a designer. And I worked for a magazine that was all PC based. So I had to convince printers, and every time I hired somebody new, I would go sit down with them and say, these are our files, and yes, they work, to the point that printers were calling me when they had other PC jobs come in, and I'd go in and say, yes, it works. It's the same software. It's still, back then it was PageMaker before it became InDesign. But there was such a mindset that it's not Mac. Oh, it's going to break everything. And now I use a Mac. I do love a Mac.
Yeah.
But I think
I lived through that. I lived through that on the other side in a weird way. So I was a software developer in college, probably about this time you were a designer in college. And if you didn't have a PC, you were like a faker. Like, how could you use a Mac? Like, it was to the point of, I remember when I got my first Mac, which I have one now, and I was like, how do you use all of this stuff? Everything is so weird. It's just like completely ticked off about it. And now I've like gotten to help my kids once in a while on the PC, and I'm like, where is everything?
Uh, I have both. I have my Mac, which is my main workstation, but then I have a couple of PCs just because with websites you have to have
You
different.
have to see it. Yeah.
But I think the main thing at the end of the day, they're all tools,
Yeah.
and once you realize that, it's just a tool. It's a means to an end. And if you get really super caught up in what you're using and even the software you're using, you're missing the point that it's a tool. You
Yeah.
know?
You could have to draw it out by hand and take a photo of it, you know.
I've done that
I know
actually.
you just said that. I was like, or you could use a tool, or you can complain enough where you can just go draw it.
Yeah,
And it's not going to work as well.
I did have that for, and it was this funniest thing. Back in the 90s, I guess, I did a lot of work for music labels. And I was doing a CD for a Texas music label in conjunction with Stubbs Barbecue. And I was trying to find online a barbecue splotch, a image of a barbecue. And I was mentioned to a friend in a group, and he said, so you're looking for a background image of a barbecue splash? And I said, yes. He said,
Why
do
don't you
you
just
not
make
have
one?
barbecue sauce in your refrigerator? I'm like, yeah, I do. He said, why don't you just go use the real thing and take a picture of it? And I had gotten so used to everything having to be created that it was like, oh, and that was a huge moment for me that like, okay, duh.
I might need to take a step back here and
Because, so yeah, I did. I got barbecue sauce out. I stuck it, and then I ended up adding ketchup to it because it wasn't quite pretty
red
enough.
enough.
But it is. And I think I got so, and it's easy to get that way with technology. You get so caught up in what you're trying to create that you forget the end point, that it's supposed to look like this, and there's probably a much simpler way to get there.
Yeah, I had something not quite as fun as that, but I like to draw like little like cartoons, but real simple, like just simple cartoons. And I was trying to find this image of a little sketched cartoon that like met this need that I had, and then I was like, why don't you could draw, like you forget somehow that you can draw. And I have an iPad with like the pencil too and everything, and I was so I opened InDesign up, or not InDesign because I haven't tried that one, but just the free Adobe Draw. Holy Batman, that thing is awesome. And I
Mm-hmm.
drew like the cutest little character, and now I can use it as a graphic. Who
Because
knew? I was like, but I'm a nerd. I got used to my tools, and I forgot that I actually can do creative things once in a while. So we might be the opposite side of the same coin, I think. I was like, you can draw, dummy. What are you doing?
yeah.
And it turned out real cute too. It's a little Buddha, little
Oh,
Buddha girl. She's super cute. So we talked a lot about, kind of Heron itself, your company, and some of your background. But before we run out of time, can you tell people a little bit about what services you provide so that
yes.
if they're looking for help, they know what to call you about?
Well, I do marketing and branding consulting. And my favorite thing is working with people, like I said earlier, on how your marketing can represent you and connect you with your ideal client. And the other side of that is, since I have been involved with technology since the beginning, I know it's not that complicated. It's really not. And anyone can learn to be tech savvy. And so I have a workshop in which I help people build a WordPress website. And we start off, and we do go through the marketing behind the website before we actually start building a website to make sure it meets your needs and fits in with your branding and your marketing. But my team and I build the hardest part of setting up a WordPress website, I think, is getting the theme and getting it just set up. So that's what my team and I take that part out of it. We build an empty custom WordPress website or custom WordPress theme to match people's branding. So it doesn't have all the bells and whistles of the off-the-shelf themes that really bog down people's websites and hurt your CEO. I could go on for years about the off-the-shelf themes. I think are really bad for SEO. So we build custom themes based on stuff from WordPress that match people's branding, and then set them up with an empty website. We have part of the workshop, I teach people how to gather content, what you're looking for in keywords. From a marketing standpoint, this is what your website needs to have. I teach them to source photographs, how to get their photos ready, optimized, sized down properly. And then I teach them how to upload them. And we go into all the different parts of running a WordPress website, from your plugins to how you would actually take it off of our servers and move it to someplace else for your hosting, how to set up an SSL certificate, how to set up content delivery networks for your caching. I mean, all of the things that sound super complicated aren't. And that's what, by the end of our workshop, people understand. It's, I mean, sometimes a lot of big words and jargon thrown around, but it's all super simple stuff that anyone can learn. So our goal is, in 4 to 6 weeks, you have a custom professional website that you know how to manage. And
oh, that's awesome.
It's called Website Creator Workshop. And I invite anyone to take part in it. It's not free. It's, but it is less than what you would spend for custom website design, and you learn how to do it yourself.
Well, it's like teaching you to fish instead of giving you the bucket.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Although he was pretty cute trying to get the bucket, but well, anything else you would like to share with our audience then before we wrap it up for today?
No, I think the two things that if people could take away, one is that your branding and marketing can make your life easier and help you be more confident as a business owner and open doors for you as long as it's done right. And that anyone can be tech savvy. Anyone can learn to be tech savvy.
All right. So it can make your life easier and anyone can learn to be tech savvy.
Yes, absolutely.
That's validating or parroting back. Got to get something in there at the end. Well, thank you so much, Leslie. I know you're super busy. You're a 3-boy mom. You got doggies. You're, keeping a business running and doing all kinds of great stuff. So thank you so much for coming and spending the afternoon with me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Jackie. It has been a lot of fun. I've enjoyed talking to you.
Awesome. Well, we'll see you hopefully again soon, and I'll talk to you later. Okay?
All right. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.